You're listening to the Art of Greatness podcast, episode number 28. Welcome to the Art of Greatness podcast. My name is June Allen, your sister in service from JuneAllen.net. On this show, I empower non-white listeners to prioritize their racial wellness and emotional sobriety. The platform is for educational purposes, is based on my experiences, and is shared in good faith. Always consult your doctor, therapist, or licensed mental health professional before applying any of the suggestions given within this platform. The vision is to build a blackalicious life of empowerment so there can be peace. Now on with the show. Greetings family, greetings. Welcome to the Art of Greatness podcast. June Allen here, and thank you for joining me. Thank you for joining me today. Today we're going to be we're talking about the 7 keys of Black empowerment. We're continuing that conversation from last week, where we talked last week about the first key being telling the truth. If you haven't had a chance to listen to that episode, it's really important that you maintain the momentum with these series that I'm doing. So you can find that episode at www.juneallen.net/truth. In that episode, we talked about, why Black people find it difficult to tell the truth, challenges we have with telling the truth, and what we need to do, how to find a safe space in order to tell the truth. So this week, we are talking about key number 2. And key number 2 is use the tools. Now, obviously, last week we talked about telling the truth. And this week, we need to have tools in order to understand what to do when we do tell the truth, because if we don't have a safe place to tell the truth, or some sort of process in place in order to know what to do when the truth is told, then it's going to be much harder for us to tell the truth. But once we have a set of tools, a process that we have in place in order to deal with the truth, then it's going to make it a lot easier for us to stand in that integrity, to stand in that authenticity. So what do I mean exactly when we talk about tools? What exactly are tools? So tools are certain behaviors that we practice, that we learn, that we choose to do, that help us to understand ourselves. Now, when we're talking about Black empowerment and moving forward, we're talking about behaviors that help us to feel and cope and process with the pressures and strains of living under white supremacy. Whether consciously or unconsciously, there is going to be a reaction to living under white supremacy. There is going to be some way that we deal with the pressures of that. We accept that white supremacy is alive and kicking and thriving. And so we have to accept as human beings that there is going to be some sort of reaction to that. And so it's important for us to have a process in place that keeps us balanced, and so that we're able to respond to white supremacy as opposed to react. And this is what we call in recovery being emotionally sober. This is what emotional sobriety is. When we're sober and we understand who we are as human beings and understand our emotions, we're able to make a much better choices for ourselves and our families, and ultimately to end white supremacy. In the community, I see this a lot. A lot of us are very numb to our emotions. We're very dead as far as that's concerned, and that's because it's been a bit of a survival technique just to numb our emotions so we don't feel anything, because obviously to feel it's incredibly painful to think and feel the situation that we're in. So our defense mechanism to deal with the overwhelm of emotions of living under the system of racism is to shut down, to not feel anything, and that obviously helps us to be able to go about our day and do the things that we need to do. But it's important that we deal with this, because when we don't deal with our emotions, that's when we act out. That's when we behave in ways that are inappropriate, because we're so cut off from our feelings. And we do need to be conscious of our emotional sobriety. We need to be connected to who we are as human beings. It's very hard not to get triggered by racism, be it internal or external, because it's there all around us all the time. There are many of us, if we talk about the internalized racism in our families, a lot of us were not taught emotional literacy in our families, because we constantly in survival mode. We just need to get from one day to the next. We just need to, worry about putting the next meal on the table, to, making sure that we can earn money to feed our families and all of that kind of stuff. And so, we're constantly in survival mode. And when you're in survival mode, there's no space to feel, to process, to grieve, and to just be honest about how we feel about things. But if we're going to move forward, and if we're going to change our behaviour and change our legacy, then we need to be a lot more conscious about how we respond, how we react to racism, how to be honest about how it impacts what is our personal wound. How do we deal with it and come out of that position of just surviving? We also need the tools to understand how we talk to ourselves, in terms of racism and the negative self-talk and all of that. We need to understand how we do that. We can't change our behaviour. We can't change anything unless we understand the impact that it's had on us personally. So the healing is about our relationship with ourselves, our relationship with our emotions. And this is really what know thyself really means. We have to build that intimacy, that racial intimacy with ourselves. And, there are many of us that tend to think that know thyself is just about understanding our history and understanding, talking about the pyramids and that we used to be kings and queens and all of that kind of stuff. But that's only part of the puzzle. And, we can't hide in that. That is not enough for us to change our behaviour, just understanding our history. We also have to understand who we are as human beings and how we've reacted to racism. And we have to be able, be willing to make the changes to reconnect with ourselves as human beings, as black people, at an emotional level, so that we can move forward and begin to connect to each other and ourselves in a really healthy way. So what exactly are the tools? What's the process? Now, I've actually created a 3-step system, which I've used for a very, very long time. And it's been really great to be able to go back to this system every time that, I'm feeling triggered or I'm feeling upset about something. It's just a really great way of keeping the energy moving, because ultimately our emotions are different types of energy, and this 3-step system that I've created helps me stay connected to my emotions and helps me process the difficult emotions and just helps me to maintain a sense of balance. So this 3-step system has 3 layers to it. The first one is discharge. You've got to be able to discharge especially the negative energy out of your body. And there's a lot of anger involved. Obviously, anger is quite one of the primary emotions as a response to racism, understandably, because our boundaries are being crossed all the time. So to discharge that means that you can do a lot of discharging with physical exercise. You can do a lot of discharging through rage, what I call rage journaling. That just means just taking your journal out and just free flowing, what's coming out of your head. Cuss, scream, write down, whatever you need to do, but just, get that stuff out into the journal. Anger can be a very toxic emotion if it's not dealt with. Anger in of itself is not a difficult, it's not a bad emotion. It's when it becomes when we don't take responsibility for that energy, that's when it can become abusive, and when we can internalize it and it can become addictions and stuff like that, because it turns into, self-abuse. So things like, anger in particular, it is really, really important that we use the discharge process to keep the anger moving, and it has to happen on a daily basis. Again, because we're easily triggered under the current system of racism, white supremacy. It's important to get that stuff out and to keep that stuff moving. Also, because of the nature of internalized racism within our families, within our communities, we're going to get triggered by each other. So again, the anger, the discomfort, all of that stuff that we might feel when we're around each other, again, that stuff needs to be discharged out of our system so that we can remain balanced and, make sober choices for ourselves when we are around people or situations that trigger us. The second layer is reflection. And this is, once you've actually got rid of the intensity of the, discharged all the negative stuff out of your body, out of your psyche, then there's space to reflect. There's space for looking at the situation, the challenges more objectively, and to be able to understand, what is underneath the anger, what is underneath the difficult emotion, and you'll be able to reflect and think about, well, how can you transform it? What is actually in your control? What can I do differently? How can I talk to this person differently? How can I respond differently to whatever the situation is? But that moment of reflection is a really, really important tool to use for transformation. And the third layer is to nurture. Now this one is, oh my gosh, this is probably one of the most well, they're all just as important as each other. But to nurture ourselves is such a key part of the process, because, because so much of our life has been about abandoning ourselves. It's about, being told that we're not worthy, that we're ugly, that we're dirty, that we're violent, the negative stereotypes that are thrown at us all the time. Again, being triggered by other people in the community, the negative self-talk, all of these things means that, it's quite a vicious situation to be present in. And so the act of nurturing ourselves, being self-compassionate, giving ourselves permission to pause, giving ourselves permission to think, having that moment of silence, feeding ourselves well, nurturing our bodies, loving our bodies. All of these things are really, really important for us, again, to remain balanced and to remain emotionally sober. I've been teaching these principles, these rituals to people for quite a while now, and they work. And, you'll find that you'll react a lot less to things, and you'll find that you're responding a lot more, because there's not that knee-jerk reaction that happens when people say things or do things. You're able to reflect a lot more on what's going on with you. You'll be a lot more intimate with yourself, with who you are. And so, the whole concept of know thyself becomes something that's a lot more intimate. You'll feel a lot more connected to yourself. And initially, that initial integration is hard, because you're going to have to feel things that you haven't felt for a long time, stuff that you've shut down. But once you get into the routine and you start doing it regularly, it can become a really empowering place to be, because then you're not controlled by what other people do. You become a lot more empowered by understanding, that you can set boundaries with people, because you understand, what your needs are. You understand what your own boundaries are. You'll be able to set your own boundaries because you understand what is unsafe and what is safe for you. One of the most powerful things about practicing this three-step system, this DRN system, is, I have a new level of empathy for people, especially black people, and I used to feel so triggered by other black people, and because of my own experience of abuse and stuff. And that is such a beautiful, one of the most beautiful things about practicing that. And this weekend I found myself in some very powerful recovery meetings, and where I was able to speak with other black people, other people of colour, about our experience. And I'm going to try hard not to cry, but the level of empathy and compassion that I felt just being around other people of colour, where we were able to share our experience. And it was just such a nurturing thing to be able to sit with other people and hear their stories and hear their challenges and connect with them, particularly with black men. And this has happened to me a few times, actually, when I hear black men sharing in recovery meetings, and it triggers something quite deep inside me. And I know that in the past I've really kind of objectified black men, in the sense that I didn't want to connect to my own humanity, because that means that I would have to connect and feel the pain that I do feel around black men, or around the black men in my life that I'd felt disappointed by, that I'd felt let down by, that I'd felt abandoned by, the black men that abused me in the past. And so I didn't want to connect to black men, in any way, because it meant that I would have to feel all of those things. I would have to feel all the grief around the black men in my life that had disappointed me. But I also understand that in doing that I also block any future relationships, any future love, any future connections that I may make to other black men, because I'm still holding all of that grief. I'm still holding all of that pain around black men. So I needed to be in those meetings. Recovery meetings for me are one of the most powerful tools that I use to connect to my own humanity and to connect to other people, and to be able to build relationships with other black people that I just know that I could never have done before. I'm feeling very, very grateful, not only for my recovery, but to be in a position where I can begin to share a lot of this stuff with you. It's easy to get caught up in the whole thing around recovery just being about drugs and alcohol, about substance abuse, and it isn't. It's about behaviours as well. My recovery is not about substance. I'm not an alcoholic. I don't do drugs. Recovery for me has never been about substance. It's been about behaviours. It's about my compulsion is avoidance. My compulsion to avoid human beings. My social anorexia, racial anorexia, my pain around being around other black people. That's what my addiction is about. That's what my compulsion is about. And so, my addictive behaviours, or my healing, my recovery, is about reintegrating to myself, reintegrating with my community, finding the courage to, be emotionally intimate with people that look like me, facing my own blackness, facing the grief and the pain that I've held on to, that's in my family, that I didn't want to deal with because of the, I just thought the overwhelming pain would destroy me. But actually it's healed me, even though it's difficult to deal with, and it is painful. I've been able to connect to other people in a way that I could, and there's no way that I would be doing this podcast and talking to you if it wasn't for my recovery. I'm a better parent because of it. I'm able to connect with my daughter and empathise with who she is as a human being, as a young girl, because of doing this work. So, the tools are important. The tools are important, and you have to find the tools that work for you. I have a 6-week mastermind that's coming up next month, and this is specifically around wounded daughters and their difficult relationships that they have with their mothers. And, like I was saying before, just using these tools and becoming more connected to myself has helped me become a better parent, because I'm more connected to my own humanity. And as I learn, I teach. As I learn my own who I am, I'm able to teach this to my daughter. I'm able to relate to her in a way that I just couldn't relate to her before. And even though, I don't have a relationship with my mother at the moment, because of, the challenges that I've had with that relationship in the past, I have a different understanding about who she is, because I can understand where she's coming from. It doesn't make me feel it still doesn't make me feel safe in the relationship. It's still an unsafe place for me to be, and it's very triggering. But I just have more perspective on it, and I'm able to let things go in the relationship that I just felt that I wasn't able to do before. So this 6-week mastermind is really going to be a powerful space for wounded daughters to be able to really begin to understand the relationship, to build a relationship with themselves, and to begin to transform the relationship with their mothers, however they decide to move forward with it, whether it's low contact, no contact, or just to be able, it's not about the mother. It's about really focusing on you as the wounded daughter, and starting there and building that relationship, and starting to rebuild your self-esteem, helping you to understand your feelings, and to be able to find your own tools that are going to work for you, to be able to deal with the challenges of what it means to be a wounded daughter, and what it means to deal with the relationship with your mother, whatever that looks like. So if if this is something that that you're ready to start doing this work, then you can sign up at daughters.juneallen. It's daughters.juneallen.net. You can sign up to the mailing list there, to the waiting list, and when things go live, you'll be notified. And there's going to be a lot of information and stuff like that that's going to be going out over the next few weeks, that are going to help you understand. And then obviously if this is something that you're willing and you're ready to start doing, then it will be really great to actually have you as part of that space. There's going to be lots of other women. They're going to be there to support you, to nurture you. It's going to be a very compassionate, non-judgmental place for us to be able to share and get well. So I look forward to to seeing you there, if this is something that is going to, that you're ready to do, that you're ready to start doing the work. So that's it for today's show. I hope that you found this episode useful. So that is key number 2, use your tools. Next week, we're going to be talking about key number 3. The third key to Black empowerment is about understanding the system of racism, white supremacy. So don't miss that one. That's going to be a really great one. I'll see you then. Take care. This podcast is sponsored by the Yard of Greatness Empowerment Program, Build Your Blacknificence. A compassionate 6-week mastermind honouring the wounded daughters of abusive black mothers. We're constantly told that we should honour our mothers, but what do you do when she repeatedly behaves dishonourably? Many wounded daughters cope with maternal abuse by venting to others, blaming yourself, and believing that things will change if you just try harder. Deep down, you know that these things don't work, and now you're trapped inside the resentment of being unheard. What has been the cost of that relationship? What has been the cost of you not addressing your pain? How does it impact your ability to love, to thrive? If you're exhausted by the self-doubt and anxiety around your mother's behaviour, I have an opportunity that will transform the way that you feel about yourself and the relationship. If you're scared of hurting your children the way your mother hurt you, then this space will empower you to review and recharge the way that you parent. After the success of the webinar, I'm Scared of Becoming My Mother, wounded daughters of abusive black mothers will have an intimate, non-judgmental space to understand the wound, connect with others, and heal through self-empowerment and self-parenting. If you're a wounded daughter looking for a compassionate space to heal, go to daughters.juneallen.net. The Mastermind will launch on March the 10th, 2018. I hope to see you there.